Great. I'm Allison Young. I'm a pediatrician in Missoula and a member of the board for Montana Health Professionals for a Healthy Climate. And it is my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Jen Robohm, who is a co-board member, a good friend, phenomenal human. She's also a licensed clinical psychologist who's been on faculty at the University of Montana just over 20 years. At first directing the Department of Psychology's Clinical Psychology Center, and then more recently teaching family physicians, family medicine residents for the Family Medicine Residency of Western Montana, fostering their interests in climate-related projects and work as well. She's been in clinical practice for over 25 years and brings a climate-aware psychotherapy perspective to that work. She received her PhD from the University of Michigan and PhD from Johns Hopkins. In addition to being a board member with Montana Health Professionals, she's a member of the Climate Psychology Alliance of North America since 2020, and she'll deliver this session, Amplifying the Healthcare Voice Through Climate Advocacy in Uncertain Times.
Thank you. I'm going to have trouble doing this juggling act, so we'll see how I do. I'm wondering if there's any way I can ask some of the people who are a half a mile away to move up a little bit closer. And the reason I'm saying that is I want to make this, especially after lunch, a more interactive thing. We're going to have conversations with each other. And so unless you want to get your 10,000 steps in, it might be helpful to move up a little bit. And you don't even need a table. You could just bring your chair up a little bit closer. I know there are probably some introverts who are a little nervous about that, but I think it'd be cool. This is a test to see who lasts longest. Thanks for humoring me, you guys. The other thing, maybe I'll direct this at Rob and Lori, because I want this to be interactive, it might be nice to have a mic runner too for if people are saying stuff. Okay. So I want to start by just expressing some appreciation for my fellow board members. Every time we get together, I'm kind of in awe and shock at the level of expertise from some of my colleagues and their level of commitment. And honestly, the depth of their benches. We have some nice connections and we're able to draw on really cool resources from around the country. So I think we're very lucky in Montana to have that. And I want to thank all of you who came here on a Saturday in April. There are a lot of other things you could be doing, and you're here with us, and we really, really appreciate that. Like I said, I want to make this a bit more interactive than some of the other presentations. Initially, this was going to be a panel, and then I was going to impart my wisdom to you. And then I realized, no, we're going to have a conversation. And I'm hoping this will feel relevant and useful to everybody. I don't have any financial conflicts to disclose. I'll say I have a personal conflict. I have worked at the U for over 20 years. I feel compelled in this moment to say that I'm speaking to you as a public citizen right now, and I think that speaks to the political, cultural, whatever situation we're in right now, and I think that's going to be a part of the conversation we're about to have as well. Okay, so I want to take you guys on a bit of a journey with me, and so here's my roadmap. So I want to just acknowledge why health professionals are strongly positioned to be climate advocates. I've actually asked some of the advocates who are outside to come into the room. Not all of them are health professionals, but they're experts in advocacy, and so I think their voices will be really helpful in this conversation. I want to ask each of you, how many people have been trained in motivational interviewing? All right, good. Okay, so I'm going to be a bad MI practitioner and have you assess motivation, readiness, and confidence all at the same time. But I want to have you guys just kind of take your temperatures and say, where am I actually? Like this advocacy, that sounds like a good deal, but am I actually ready to do it? And have a conversation about that. I'm going to have you guys explore your why for climate engagement. Why do this thing? Why is it so important to you? And then we'll talk about strategies for addressing some of the challenges and obstacles and things that might make us a little more hesitant or a little more reluctant sometimes to engage in the advocacy, even if we think and know it's really, really important. And then lastly, I'm going to try to get you guys to make some commitments about next steps that you might take in this arena. Is everybody game? All right. So I'm just going to start, and this is, I'm not going to spend long here because a lot of you have heard this before, but there's some really good reasons why health professionals are really uniquely situated to talk about climate change. And I would add not just health professionals, but folks who care about human health. The World Health Organization says health is the argument for climate action, which I think is pretty interesting. Like lots of people care a lot about polar bears. They care a lot about landscapes. Everybody cares about health. Everybody cares about their own health, the health of their kids, their grandchildren, whomever. And so if we're trying to bring people into our tent, talking about health is a really good frame for thinking about how do we get people engaged in climate action. In the survey here, the text is small, but Eco America tried to get a sense of what would be a good reason for us to be engaging in climate action. And people said, yeah, protecting public health and personal health. Over 3/4 of people said that. So this gets traction. And I like to say health is sticky for people, and who better to talk about health than us, right? So it's a good reason why we're doing this. I'm also just going to say, whenever I public speak, my mouth gets exceptionally dry, so I'm going to stop and take a drink. Second reason, I'm not even going to pretend to roll off the stats the way Beth Schenk can, but we all know that we work in a very carbon-intensive industry in healthcare. It's just another reason why our voices are particularly important and why we're uniquely positioned to take action in this realm around sustainability. You've heard that we're trusted messengers. I'm pretty sure, I couldn't find it, but I'm pretty sure when you ask just in general about who's credible, who's trustworthy, nurses are almost always at the top of the list. This was probably a drop-down menu, and so nurses weren't given as an option. They might have beaten you physicians to the punch, but people say when we're talking about who do I find trustworthy with regards to climate and health, primary care physicians are right up there near the top. Again, I think maybe credibility of healthcare professionals took an unfortunate hit during COVID, but even so, you can see that our trustworthiness is rated high, and it's actually getting higher over time. So people listen to health professionals. And again, if we have a health frame and people care about health, you can see the synergy there, why it's so useful to advocate in this area. You may not feel this way sometimes, but health professionals have a lot of power, right? We have the real privilege of having close relationships, those of us who are in direct care, close relationships with people, which is a place of leverage to help them understand why it might be useful to think about climate change or take action. We have kind of as a group more resources than a lot of folks do. We do have a fair amount of credibility, probably more education than we ever needed. And a lot of us take leadership roles. So again, that gives us a very powerful platform to talk about climate change. And I think sometimes we don't appreciate that. I'm going to guess that the people in this room probably do appreciate that. But a lot of our colleagues do not. And I think that's another reason for us to get the word out there is how do we recruit more people to do some of this work when we're so well situated. And I just wanted to add this as well. I know when I talk to my residents about advocacy, some of them say, you know, I'm interested in that, but I'm so overextended. I just worry it would just burn me out to be involved in advocacy. And I don't know about some of you, but I will tell you that probably the only reason I'm still in this game is because of advocacy for the last probably 7 years of my life. It's something that I find very energizing, very activating for me, and it helps me to feel like I'm making a difference at a larger level. And so I actually think it's an incredible antidote to burnout for a lot of us. And I especially for the students in the room, I want to just kind of share that message with you guys. I'm so thrilled to see you here and thinking about this, and I hope you'll get engaged in advocacy as well. I think you'll last longer in your careers if you do. Okay, so hopefully I've made a good case for why it's so important for us to be involved in advocacy and why we're well situated. This is one model. I'm sure there are others out there. This was some internal medicine docs a couple of years ago who were saying, hey, there are all these different domains where we can talk about advocacy practice, and they define that broadly. So maybe patient care, but also teaching, research, things like that. Community actions we can take in our communities, and then at the government level. They talked about 3 sets of tools: communication, relationships, and policy that kind of give us leverage. And they said if we're successful in those realms, we can have impacts in the individual, adjacent, and structural domains. And what they meant by adjacent was like in your healthcare facility or in your community. So I just think this is a nice picture to say there are lots of places where we can be involved in advocacy. And this was me just kind of blowing up on a page everything I could think of. And maybe there are other things you guys can think of, but one of the things I want you to take away from this jumble of words on here is there is room for everybody on tent. You may be a person who's you don't like being out there in the front and talking and whatever. Maybe some of your mouths get dry too. But everybody can make cookies for the bake sale, right? There are things we can do even behind the scenes that are considered advocacy. So just to say there's space for everybody, there's space for your talents, your interests, and lots of ways where we can make a difference in the climate and health realm. Okay, so this is the self-compassion part. So I was trying to make this big case for advocacy, and I was thinking, I don't know if this is the best time for me to be doing this because I feel kind of like crap. I've had the last couple of months being really just kind of rough for me, and feeling like of all the times when I have felt like I'm on it and on the front lines, I have felt less sure about that in recent months. I would say when I first got into advocacy, or when I first started thinking about climate and health, I identified myself as a reluctant advocate. I'm an extreme introvert. I'm curious, are there other introverts in the room? Not as many as I thought. Okay. A lot of introverts. What else can I say? I'm a glass half empty kind of girl. So when I think when I'm talking about climate change, I'm not sure I'm the best cheerleader for the cause. I'm happy to see here, Amy. I always bring this up. Amy and I were talking years and years ago about talking about climate change in parties, and we're like, maybe that's why people don't invite us to parties. So, but I decided, especially after the summer of 2017, I really wanted to get involved. That was that really smoky summer in Missoula. I don't remember how old my son was at the time, but I remember thinking, oh my God, this is happening now, and this is happening forever forward, and we've got to get involved. And for those of you who may not know me in typical Jen style, I got myself very educated. So I participated in a certificate program, then I went back and got an MPH during COVID. And then I also did a certificate in climate psychology. Really, for me, it's like I want to be able to know everything I need to know so I can talk credibly to people. I don't think that's actually necessary. That's my own stuff. But just to say, I got myself educated, and then I said, all right, how can I get involved? And part of what I did was find places where I felt like my voice would be useful. For me, it was in the education realm because I was teaching physicians or young psychologists and now some undergrads. And that's been a place for me where I found some leverage. And again, I just encourage everybody to find the place that is a good leverage point for you based on your background, your skills, and your knowledge, because there's a place for all of us. So I'm just curious, how many folks in here, well, no, I'm going to go on to the next slide. Okay, so here's my question, for those of you who are familiar with it. So on this scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being I'm not at all feeling motivated, confident, and ready at the moment, to 10 as I am ready to go out there and do my thing, I'm just curious, I want you guys to think about where you're at right now. I want you to be really honest with yourselves, because that's going to make this conversation the most useful. And maybe I'll just ask you, so say folks who are maybe a 7 or above, maybe raise your hands. Look at this room. Okay. I wasn't expecting that, but that's good. We're going to come back to you guys in a second. How about 4 to 6? Okay. Any 1 to 3s? Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Awesome. Actually, that is so lovely. So she's our newest board member. She's not so sure about this thing, but she's put herself in a position to stretch and do it anyway. Thank you very much. Yeah. So I'm curious for the, and maybe this is a microphone part, for the folks who are 7s to 10s right now, I would love to hear from the group about what helps you in this, again, particular political, cultural, social moment. What helps you to feel so motivated and confident about doing climate advocacy work? Does anybody want to kind of out themselves?
The meadowlarks are back, the bluebirds are back. That's my #1 reason. And I got to spend yesterday with the Sussex school kids, and they're advocating for personhood for the Clark Fork River. And so there's nothing like being in a room of smelly middle schoolers to make oneself feel committed.
So I think about climate advocacy as a skill that takes learning and practice. And so being at it for a while and getting really good training or exposure to that has helped me. And one of the things that I've learned is when you're speaking to someone who you are trying to communicate, who is not already on board with you, it has helped me to know that's just a person. That's just having a conversation with a person. And it's helped me to feel less intimidated in the process of bringing my voice to those who I have experienced as they're powerful.
And the other folks are, Haley's a 10. I know that's probably shocking to people, but maybe she can tell us some more.
I guess I would just say that being around others who are motivated in the space, like there's a ton of energy that comes from a conference like this. I think it's also very fair to say we had a conversation with a couple of us over lunch that some of us are tired, and that doing this work isn't always sunshine and roses. But it really is energizing to also look around the room and see that maybe the people who are 1 to 3 are now 4 to 6, or how many 7 to 10s are around me. And the students that are out there doing the good work and everything. So I think that looking around and being shoulder to shoulder next to people, so many people that I love, respect so much, keeps me going.
Being of the older baby boomer generation, I consider myself privileged. But when I look and around seeing students and the ages, a lot of here, I realize that, and that really motivates me to take action because of what I had and my concern for what you're going to have.
I guess I get my motivation from really feeling I'm inside. I'm really I guess I'm very deeply negative inside, and I get my motivation though by wanting the earth to be habitable and wanting the beauty in the earth to still be here for people. I mean, I like people. I want people to be able to be alive, and the earth is just so incredibly beautiful. So, I'm going to say something. I am the most guilty person in the world. I did not vote in 2000 in Florida for Al Gore. So I feel like I ruined the earth individually. Okay. I had 3 kids. I didn't vote. It wasn't in my face. So maybe that's my motivation. I don't know. But, and I also feel that people who can or who have been given the talents need to use them. So I feel like, yeah, you got to do something because you can. So.
Great. Thank you for that, everybody. All right, now I want to do something else. And I'll explain why I'm asking you to do this later. So again, there are a fair number of 7 to 10s in the room. I should have anticipated that. But maybe you're not all 10, so I think this applies even to you. So what I want everybody to think about for 1 second now is, what are possible deficits, barriers, challenges that might make it harder for you or other people in our field, right? Because maybe this is the really motivated crew, and we want to think about how do we help our colleagues get to the place where we are. So I want you to just write down for yourself, take some notes. What are some possible barriers, deficits, and challenges that might make it harder for folks to feel motivated, ready, I can't remember my third one, confident to engage in climate advocacy? Okay. Because I'm a glass half empty girl, I came up with a lot of them. Okay, if you want to keep writing, you can. Before we jump into that, because I do want to go there, I want to do what some of you guys preempted me and started to do, and I want everybody to do this in the room. And so again, thinking about what's our why for climate engagement. I'll go first. This is a lake in Maine that I've been to, I think 55 out of 58 summers of my life for a week, camping with my family. It was the place where my dad he was a workaholic, but he was fully present. I would guess it's where all of my favorite, most cherished family memories are. It's the place where we scattered my dad's ashes. And it's a place where I really learned to absolutely love the natural world and connect to being outdoors. And that's been very important to me in my climate advocacy. This is another one. The young man in the middle here, this is my son, Jack. He's 23. He just graduated last May from U of M with a degree in wildlife biology and a climate studies minor. Woohoo! Peter's in the back there. And he just came back from spending 6 weeks studying wolves in Yellowstone. Pretty cool kid. I think he's terrific. I'm so very proud of him, and I'm terrified about the world that we're leaving him. And so he's another one of my whys. I'll share, I was at a public lands rally a couple of weeks ago, and my introverted self was like, oh, yeah. And then at some point I said, Jen, get over yourself. You're doing this for Jack. And it helped me to yell louder. And then a third why, I think about the values that my parents instilled in me, and I think about stewardship, and I think about caring or doing things for people of less power or privilege than I have, or I think about service. And those values help to guide me when I'm trying to figure out how to spend my time and energy and where do I want to push myself. Okay? So now I want to ask all of you, I want you to again think about your why. And then I'm going to ask you to have a conversation with somebody sitting next to you. And I'm going to say maybe even somebody you don't know, because one of the things that I think is so important, and Haley alluded to this, is we need to build community. And that means getting to know each other and maybe sharing really cool things about each other. So think about your why, and then please have a conversation with somebody in your environments about your whys. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna interrupt you for just 1 second. I forgot to say, I'm so sorry that there are people who are doing this online, and I'm hoping that if you guys unmute yourselves, that you'll be able to have that conversation with each other. There will be interactive portions of this, and so hopefully the online folks can do that every time we take a break.
Are there other people unmuted?
I'm unmuted.
Hey, who's this?
Oh, I'm Val Beebe.
Hi, I'm Frances DeForest.
Oh, and where are you? I'm up
I'm
in Kalispell.
I'm in Hot Springs actually.
Oh, great.
And what do you do? What
I'm a
makes
family, I'm a family nurse practitioner in pediatrics.
Oh, excellent. Okay, yeah, I'm a nurse. I actually have a lot of summer camp and school nursing and even college health experience at the UM. So that's really probably a wonderful job being a pediatric nurse practitioner. I'm sure it
Oh,
brings its joys and it's tough spots.
yeah.
What do you focus on with the climate change and
Well, kind of for me, I've just spent a lot of time personally. Like I have a plant, I eat a plant-based diet and
Oh, me too.
yeah, yes, I've been that way since the 80s after reading Diet
Yeah.
for a New America.
Yeah, yep, I remember that. I'm probably just a little bit younger than you, but I've been eating I say primary vegetarian, I will say that in recent sometimes I've had some like cold water fish, I'm honest about it, but
Yeah.
sometimes I'll eat vegan for a long time, but yeah, I've raised my children that way for a good part of their lives and stuff too. So it's good to meet you, Val.
Yeah. And I also was able to get some land and I put a conservation easement on it. And
Oh, sweet.
I've kind of been more working in my own personal realm, knowing I'm
Uh-huh.
doing everything I can, but I feel like, I think this group is fantastic. I'm
Isn't it just
so
wonderful?
impressed. Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
Well, I'm really glad we connected because I just got the forum moderator position for the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments for the Pacific Northwest. So I'm just
Oh wow.
going through onboarding that, so I'm not
Yeah.
really active, but it's going to start happening here, in the next few weeks. And so, I'd love to stay connected with you. I live in Hot Springs. I've been involved in environmental you know, issues in various ways. I made biodiesel for a while and ran a biodiesel car and year-round biked and, all sorts of things like
Great.
that. And, into organics for quite, since my early 20s and the early 90s, since it was a thing, since we knew about GMO foods were going to come to the shelf is when they announced that, right? 91,
Hey.
92. So,
I'm gonna bring you guys back. I hate to
Oh.
interrupt this because the energy's great.
yeah.
Oh,
So
Francis,
I want
I'm
to make
going to
sure we have
send you
time
my
for
phone
everything else.
number
But I actually
Okay.
think the
and the
noise in the room
message.
speaks to the value of talking about values in your why, because I think it's something that really helps us tap into some resources and pools of energy. And maybe we might talk about this later, but I also think that's a great place to connect with people, even if you think they don't think like you, right? I think we would probably find if we had more conversations that there may be some more shared values than we're aware of, and it's the thing that connects us to each other. So I think it's always a useful place to go. Okay, so now I wanted to go back to obstacles and challenges. And again, I want to stress as hopefully a decent MI practitioner that it's not that we shouldn't talk to patients or ourselves about obstacles and challenges. We just want to make sure we don't get stuck there because that's when people start to feel really discouraged. So I want to have a conversation about obstacles and challenges, thinking about it in the sense of how do we problem solve around these, knowing what we know might slow us down. And I like to talk to folks sometimes about how obstacles and challenges are like speed bumps, right? If we can figure out how to, maybe we have to slow down, but if we can figure out how to move through them, we can keep going where we want to go. Sometimes we experience a challenge as like, it feels like a brick wall, but it's a speed bump. And so I want to have this conversation in that spirit, okay? So the first thing I want to do, again, I'm going to have you guys maybe, some people can turn around. I want you to get into groups of, say, 6 people. I just want you to compare notes and see where are some areas of overlap that you came up with in your lists. Does that make sense? Okay, let's go. Let's do that for a couple minutes. So you have lack of education. Yeah. Uh-huh. You don't have to come up with the solutions because we're going to do that together. So just compare lists in terms of what problems you came up with.
Missoula out to Tura, and I feel, you know, I see that I'm on the Clinton Community, Facebook page, and it's just amazing to see some comments, how willing people are to kind of attack each other over differences we believe. I have to double think putting out political signs or even talking to my neighbors about, the other day I almost let slip that I went to the protest among some Trump supporting neighbors. So, yeah, I have to monitor myself. And so I could see that people that lived in communities like that may care or want to have left family. Supporting somebody who believes differently. Maybe not. But my disability and my Medicaid, yeah. So I still see a lot, like I said the other day, some of the comments that I saw. Yeah, and it was amazing because they were accusing, they were like, wow, a party that believes that it's okay to buy voters. Usually, learn people that it very but I do feel like there are definitely yeah. Yeah, I think otherwise, maybe the perception of being overwhelmed. There's so many concerns and do with my life and things in my home and but just know that a lot of these people are stuck in echo chambers, so the fact that they're even having conversations seems to be really beneficial. And like just asking questions, trying to tell them how their thought process to do. And so I think that's what helps me because it is exhausting, but if you try to take some of the pressure off and just know that the conversation has value as opposed to meaning. I have a sort of a different experience as a climate aware therapist, and I have a lot of people who come to me specifically to talk about these issues, and even then they have a massive barrier to getting into community, which we know is like one of the biggest protective factors. And so if my list is, like childcare was the barrier for the rally last weekend, for instance, other mental health struggles, avoidance, anxiety, overwhelm, sensory issues. Some didn't want to get sick by being in a crowd. So I'm trying to figure out like how to support people who are already who are already engaged and motivated but can't quite turn the engine over to like being in community around it. There's a lot of people I hear that are like, well, I just get so, like, I don't know, the recycling just gets so, how do you, there's a lot of mixed content. Lack of education, or lack of maybe access to information that you think might be reliable, or could also be that they're, even I feel like I'm fairly well educated, but I don't have the best data recall. So I can make an argument that I'm so strongly about will give me data. I'm like, what? I gotta sit down for 2 days and find those articles. I can't just out it. I remember I read it, but that's what I do. So, that makes me interested in arguments, conversations sometimes about you might challenge me, like challenge facts and data. Yeah. Yeah. That argument. I can go.
Okay, I hate to do this, but I'm going to bring you back. Okay, so I think rather than having you guys shout them out, I've come up with some that I'm guessing are probably overlapping with some folks in the room, and then if I miss some, we'll add those at the end. But I'm curious people's thoughts about, so we've identified barriers. Now let's talk about maybe solutions or ways we can kind of, again, push through some of these speed bumps. So first one is, I'm going to guess maybe there's still some folks in the room who worry that they don't know enough about climate change or the impacts on health to be good, credible messengers. Maybe I'll just have raised hands. Are there any folks who worry about kind of I don't know enough, or I don't have enough expertise in this area to do this? Yeah, right. And so first of all, kudos to you for being here. Then that's one way to do it, right? I'll just say so. I think yeah. Uh-huh. So for those online, Robin was saying not just how do I learn about climate change or climate change and health, but how do I learn about kind of where the power is and how to kind of work within that system. Yeah. One thing that I think is kind of cool is there are a heck of a lot of resources out there now that weren't there probably 10 years ago. And so there's no end of ways where we can get more educated, maybe less speaking to Robin's point, but certainly about climate change or climate change and health. And I would add to that, even we have some resources about here's how to talk to your patients, or here's how to engage in climate and health advocacy. Or if you want to go really wild, go to University of Colorado. They have a whole program and diploma program in climate medicine. So I guess I just want to say, in terms of learning at least about climate and health, don't let that be your barrier. There's so much information, and maybe a barrier now is like, oh my God, how do I wade through all this information, right? But that's a nice problem for us to have. I'm just curious for maybe the folks who I just had raise your hands. How many people in the room say that is my primary barrier to engaging in climate and health advocacy? Okay. you're making my point. Thank you for my Confederates. So one thing I would just like to say is that I think often when we're thinking about advocacy, we think we have to teach people stuff. We have to give them information. And of course, we make that same mistake in our care with our patients. We think if I just talk to them about the reasons why smoking's bad for you, they'll quit, right? And I think we make that mistake. We think more information will compel people, and I actually don't think that's where the action is. I think some of the reasons why people aren't engaging around climate and health, especially in the advocacy realm, is some of the other barriers I think we're going to get to. So I just think that's good for us to remember. How about limited bandwidth? So time, energy, what have you. How many people for whom that was potentially an issue, or you've seen that in other people, right? And, my first thought about this is sometimes you just can't take it on. And I think one thing that's important to say is to give people permission sometimes to not take it on, right? If you have a young kid at home or an aging parent, or if you have a diagnosis right now you're struggling with, if you're afraid you're going to lose your job, this might not be the time to do climate and health advocacy, and that is okay. But one thought I had about this, and I think about something that Sarah Jaquette Ray said in one of her books, and she said to think about kind of your climate, she called it her mission statement, I think. Kind of like, what's my mission statement in terms of climate? What's most important to me? What do I want to do in that realm? And then she said, whenever you get asked to do something, you run it by your mission statement and say, is this consistent with my mission statement? And if it's not, you might practice using that muscle, which a lot of healthcare professionals are really bad at flexing, which is saying no. And so I'll just throw that out there, that sometimes if you say no to the stuff that's not part of your mission statement, then you get to say yes to the stuff that is. And I've actually gotten a little bit better at that lately, and it's so liberating. It's really quite incredible. So I encourage you all to try that. The other thing I would just say, and I'll speak for myself here, I probably spend a couple hours on my phone each day that I wish I wasn't doing, which is a couple of hours I could be spending on things that actually are worthwhile doing. And so anytime you guys are worried about, man, I just don't have time to do this, think about that, because we might be able to pull some time back to do things that feel more worthwhile and are more fulfilling professionally. Does anybody else have any thoughts about, again, solutions around the limited bandwidth problem that they want to share with the group? No, thanks.
Our group talked about finding joy and learning to choose the activities that help contribute to joy in our lives.
I guess speaking to that, I've been trying to maintain like a mindfulness or meditation practice in the morning and trying to reduce the wasted time on phones or procrastinating or whatever. But I have also added add some advocacy action into my morning routine, like make a phone call or write an email. And sometimes when it feels overwhelming or like too much, there's so many places that even have suggested emails or suggested scripts for phone calls that makes it easier if you have a hard time maybe, writing your own original thought. So it makes it a bit easier to do that if you incorporate it in your routine and whatnot.
Thanks for saying that. I love that. I often talk to residents about, if you want somebody to change their behavior, eliminate as many obstacles as possible, make it idiot-proof. Somebody drafts me an email and all I have to do is sign it. Man, that's pretty idiot-proof, right? That's pretty easy and something to consider. So that's great.
I also used to, and speaking to the, I guess, lack of information or knowledge, I used to hesitate sending an email because I felt like I didn't have all the facts or I couldn't remember where I heard that factoid. And I wanted to really make a well-presented, backed up argument. And it would make me not send the email because I felt like I would get overwhelmed with the time and that it took to sit down and research it and write it. And I found that sometimes even just sloppily saying, I don't support this, or that counts more than, your well thought out email that you might never send. So I've gotten over that.
Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. And we live in a post-fact world anyway, right? So don't spend too much time on that. Yeah. Right. personal characteristics. And here's, I'm going to guess things like the introverts in the room aren't so sure about this, or what other personal kind of qualities might have come up in the room? Risk aversiveness, or I'm not charismatic enough. Ridiculously shy. Okay. Yeah. So Robin pushes herself to do it, even if maybe she's not sure. Sounds like you convince yourself, I can do this, and that's helpful. So that's a positive personal characteristic. And the should is a problem, or it's a good thing? Okay. Other folks, maybe I'm going to paraphrase that and say maybe one of Robin's characteristics is taking on too much, so she's trying to be more strategic. Yeah.
There's at least 9, it's Enneagram. It's 9 types of personality that if you understand your personality and why, what you're doing and why you're doing it, it's not what you think it is. And it's not what your spouse thinks it is either. But your motivation is, and fear and anxiety, that's where I'm coming from. So that's one of the personality types. It's,
Makes sense. I think the thing I'm going to just encourage everybody is push yourself, especially if you're worried that there's a quality in you that's going to make you not a good advocate. Do it anyway. And partly because if you do it anyway, you're going to get better at it, right? And we don't need perfect advocates. We need advocates. So I'm just going to encourage you to push through that a little bit. Beth has a thought.
Thank you. Well, this may sound like the opposite of what you just said. I hope not, because I'm hearing people have concerns about advocacy. And I feel the need to say, now, if I were to say to myself, to be a successful advocate, I would have to go into a room of MAGA people and talk loudly about climate change. First of all, that would be really non-strategic. Secondly,
Maybe dangerous.
Probably dangerous. But I'm wondering if people are thinking that this is going to be a real oppositional thing. I don't think it has to be. And I think that you choose your opportunities. And I go back to your list of all the different things that are advocacy. So you think, well, it's too intimidating to do X. And then, so this is an exercise you could say, it's too intimidating to bake cookies. And then you can chuckle about that because it's not. It's too intimidating to talk to my peers. Probably not that bad. That's advocacy. It's too intimidating to try and change my nursing unit. It's not so hard, is it? Hard to get it done, but it's not hard to come up with those ideas. So I just want to kind of ratchet down the stress involved, if you allow. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, Beth. Thank you. And I think that's true. It's what I was saying before, like this is a really big tent. And so if you're risk averse, do something that feels a little less risky. If you are a braver person than I am, throw yourself into something that feels really scary. Just again, to say there are things we can all do. Yeah. I see one person in the back there.
Is that me? Okay. I kind of wanted to just sort of trail off of what you were just saying. I'm kind of in a weird position. I'm technically an international student here. I'm from Canada. And I don't know if anyone has seen some weird things in the news lately with international students being deported for feeling strongly about some of their own ideas. So for me personally, I just feel like I need to be quiet in a weird way. I'm in kind of a weird position as an immigrant in this country. But immigrants still care. We just maybe have to be quieter and find different ways to talk about it to keep ourselves safe in a weird way. But that doesn't mean that we don't talk about it. So it's just finding those unique opportunities for myself in order to have these conversations, promote things that I believe in, just in a safe way that's maybe quieter. So I'm not maybe going to be on the front lines of a protest with a sign, getting my picture taken, being in the news. But so finding different unique ways, which I think applies to a lot of people, depending on if you're in like maybe a leadership position. You don't want to become too opposing or too one-sided, and then other people don't believe in you or something like that. I think it applies to different ways, but yeah, some people are in very unique, weird, odd positions sometimes.
Actually, sadly, I don't think it's that unique a position, right? And I think I just want to stress, and I hear this in the group, there's no judgment here if somebody's not out there doing whatever, right? Everybody has personal circumstances that they have to be respectful of. And I love that you're still thinking about, are there quiet ways that I can do this? And we just want to find our places where we can do it. Yeah. Exhaustion or burnout. Anybody think about that on their list? Yeah. Any thoughts about how to work through that? None. Yeah.
Get information from different sources, some of the things we're talking about in this room, but it might be something somebody's interested in learning about. I think one of the other issues is this is all coming on the back of COVID too. So there's a lot of burnout in healthcare based on that.
Yeah, just for the folks online. So she was saying there's an article in the Journal of Climate and Health about burnout in specific, climate change and health. Thank you. And that there's already was some burnout because of COVID in the health professions, which is very real. And so exhaustion is very real. Yeah. One thought I had about this one, and this looks at some of the mental health literature, is we've seen that when folks take part in advocacy, that actually helps with depression and anxiety. And one of the studies that I like the best showed that actually if you engaged in collective advocacy or collective action, there was even more impact. So we'll speak to this maybe in a second, but I think the more you can join forces with other people, you feel more effective. You also just feel like, I'm not alone with this, right? And that can be really, really helpful. One thing I would just say in terms of exhaustion and burnout is, again, take care of yourself. You can tell, because I'm going to quote her again, Sarah Jaquette Ray talks about rest is a revolutionary act. And again, healthcare professionals are notorious, and maybe advocates are notorious about not taking care of themselves. It feels like if we're not pushing back all the time, we're not doing our job. But she says nobody wants to join a revolution of really crispy people. I'm paraphrasing. So we need to take care of ourselves so that when we engage in advocacy, we can feel more effective. There's no shame in taking a break and taking care of yourself. I think that's really, really critical for us to be paying attention to. And having said that, again, I'll just say that, I think sometimes advocacy is actually an antidote to burnout. And so consider that. You might just try it on for size and see if it makes a difference in terms of how you're feeling. Okay, I'm kind of notching it up a level now to sort of distress and overwhelm. Did that come up in anybody's lists? Okay, thoughts about how to take care of that? How do we help each other and help other folks who are trying to recruit to the cause? Limit the doom scrolling. Okay. So plant a garden or plant some flowers. Yeah.
Spend some time with your dog.
Love it.
I have felt the overwhelm with the assaults that have come every day, 5, 6 of them, with the latest governmental agency that is being threatened, the many healthcare threats, the climate threats to the entities that we have. And I feel for me, it's very important to know what's going on, but I don't have to know every detail of what's happening in each single agency. So I think that kind of sense of we are at a point where we are supposed to be overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that's happening. So being able to know it, but also contain it by the amount of detail I am exposing myself to.
I'll share another thought that I had, and this is just an intervention, but it's called behavioral activation. And it's something that we use for folks who are feeling depressed or anxious. And maybe you guys can relate to this, which is often when people are feeling depressed or overwhelmed, they kind of shut down a little bit, right? And maybe they don't exercise, or maybe they sleep a little bit more, maybe they cut class or something. And what often happens is when we're feeling particularly down or overwhelmed, we kind of pull back from a lot of the things that actually give us a sense of purpose, a sense of pleasure, a sense of meaning. And so it's a really vicious cycle, as evidenced by my airplane there. And so the antidote to that is to kind of reverse that cycle and spiral back up. And we do that with what's called activation. And by that, when I talk to clients about this, it's like, let's think of some things that you know, if you engage in them, they'll probably make you feel at least a little bit better. If somebody's really overwhelmed, we don't say, hey, let's go run 20 miles. No, we might say, hey, let's walk around the block a couple of times. But the key is to think of some things that you think, if I engage in these, I will feel at least a little bit better, and then schedule them and do that. And two keys about this is, one, I would say act according to your plan, not your mood, because if you ask yourself, hey, do I feel like going and talking to a legislator about climate change? The answer is probably going to be, no, I do not. But if you say to yourself, how will I feel if I talk to that legislator? And you think, I'll probably feel a little bit better, you might be more inclined to do it. So act according to your plan and not your mood. And again, well, I'll just stop there. Act according to your plan, not your mood. And again, start small, because if you're really feeling overwhelmed, talking to a legislator is a big ask, but maybe you send one of those drafted emails to your legislator, and that can still feel like you're doing something and you're digging yourself out of that hole, okay? I agree. I think we're meant to be overwhelmed right now, and it's easy to shut down. That's a very natural response to trauma, frankly, and just overwhelm. And the more we can stay activated, and I like that word because it feels activating, the better. So try to hold on to that. Powerless or impotence, did that come up at all? How many people think, you know, I want to do stuff, but is it really going to make a difference? It's kind of just a drop in the bucket, right? Like, I don't know. Anybody worry about that? You guys are made of stronger stuff than I am. Okay, thoughts about that?
Robin Wall Kimmer wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, and she also wrote The Serviceberry. And in The Serviceberry, she talked about this feeling of being overwhelmed by the choices to contribute to making the world a better place. And she said, just, you don't have to do everything perfect. Just choose one that you can do.
Any other thoughts or solutions?
I'm online. I'd like to say something. My name's Frances, and I'm a nurse. And
we're coming.
And for many years, you know, I've tried different avenues of things.
In my 20s, I taught wilderness therapy, and one of my teachers that was teaching me how to be a wilderness therapist was a really deep meditator. And his best quote that I use every day now is he just doesn't want to add to the problem. And so if I don't do something really active one day, or I don't make a change, I'm like, just didn't add to the problem. So, I mean, maybe that sounds pathetic, but that keeps me going a lot of times, is I'm just not adding, I'm not contributing. And that's better than what I could be, you know, doing the opposite.
Nice. One thing I think is important for us to hold on to, I think in our society, we sort of celebrate the heroes and the folks who do these really big triumphant things. And so it's easy to feel like, well, I'm not Greta Thunberg, or I'm not Martin Luther King, so it doesn't really make sense for me to do anything. And I think it's really important to remember that everybody in this room, there are millions of people all over the world who are working on this problem. And if each of us is putting a drop in the bucket, and there are millions of us doing that, our buckets start to fill up. And the other thing I think is just really critical, and we see this in healthcare, you guys, like you might plan to see with a patient, and 6 months later they make a change, and you don't even remember what it is that you said that helped them to do that. I think the arc for advocacy is sometimes long. Sometimes we get rewarded, but even Lori working on the Held v. Montana case, right? That took years to make that happen. So I think we can lose sight of our effectiveness because we don't see something immediate, and maybe it doesn't feel huge, but I think that contributes to that sense of we're not doing anything, and it's just not true. So hold on to that. If you think you have no power and you don't do anything, then you don't have any power. So we can't fall into that. But every little bit counts, and everybody here is doing stuff, and I think that's really critical to hold on to. Is Lori here? There you are, Lori. I have a question. Because I have a couple of potentially interactive things to do that would take time, and in theory, I'm stopping in 5 minutes. I think we have a half-hour break after this. I was wondering if we could go a little long since we started late. Um, 5 minutes is probably not enough for what I want to do. Okay. I want to do something. I hope this isn't too corny. I actually don't think it is. I'm going to make an executive decision. It's not. It's really good to do. So this is from, how many people have heard of Joanna Macy? Good, a bunch of you have. She's one of my heroes. I'd say she's an elder. She's in her mid-90s now. She's been working in this realm for a long time. And I think, again, she feels like it's easy to lose track of some of our power. And so I want you, if you guys are game, I want you to do this exercise with each other. So I want you to pair up. I want you to think about a time when you did or said something that made a real difference. And I want to stress, it doesn't have to be something huge. It doesn't even have to be climate related. It's just something where you did something and there was an impact that you felt really good about, okay? And then the person who's listening to the story, I want you to listen for personal qualities. There are a bunch on the screen there that you can reflect back to your partner that you heard about the thing that they did. Okay, does that make sense? I see some quizzical faces. Okay, this may be out of some people's comfort zone. I'm going to encourage you to do it anyway. So let's do this for maybe 5 minutes. So let's say 2.5 minutes per person. And then maybe we'll have you just share some of the qualities at the end that we heard in the room, okay? So dyads or maybe the folks online can do it together, but a time when you made a difference.
And I was thinking about quality of life. A lot of times in our daily work as clinicians, I often, am busy or see something, some inappropriately segregated ways, and have one really make a difference. Have that conflict in my mind, like, am I gonna have to really make a difference? I usually end up like, yeah, be there, and then if I do make all those little actions, see how it adds up, even if I like recycling the fish trays, put it in recycling rather than the trash. Lately, there's been about the trash. I can see that little pile.
Is there anyone else off mute? Strange, right?
Putting a much bigger pile, whether or not, really effective recycling plastic, that's another question. But, being there and also, having that action, that behavior in front of my other clinicians, just leading by action. Has made I think motivating.
So if we notice the qualities, I would say steadfastness, persistence, role modeling. So I hear compassion and commitment and patience. Grit. Courage. Yeah. Hard, it's hard. I don't know. I can't always tell what impacts people until years later. People will come back and say, I really remember what you said. I said, yeah. What did I say? So I don't honestly have a great story. I know that I have a nice friend of mine. No. But why? I am sure. Did you have a yearbook? Most likely to, well, I'm sure. All of some people have, we need those. Yes. Yeah, so I don't know, I don't know, yeah. Well, at different times, I guess I feel like, like what they were saying earlier, that people can get burned out. I read through this, it's not what people said, but if you're expecting action to result in the whole thing, this is long, slow work. You're not going to see that. So that can't be your measure of success. It can't be that, well, I tried to do this and, nobody listened, or nobody did it, or the world didn't. Well, that's not.
Okay, crew, I'm going to bring you back again. I'm so sorry. This is great. I can't even interrupt because people are talking about it. I'm going to bring you back, guys, just in the interest of time. My apologies. This is the challenge with interactive stuff is you never know how long it's going to take. I love this exercise because I think it's, especially at a time when we're feeling maybe a little powerless and helpless, it's really helpful to be reminded of some personal strengths and things you've already accomplished, because I think we lose track of our own power, and this is a nice way to remind ourselves of that, right? I would love to ask you all about what just came up. I'm going to buzz through anyway. We talked a little bit about isolation before. I just want to stress, again, if you can find your people, it makes this so much more fun and easier and I think more effective. So I'll just say, depending on where you work, if you feel like you're isolated and alone, look for your people or come join us. We'd be happy to play with you. I'm going to ignore this one only in the interest of time. And I think we already talked a little bit. Maybe I don't think we've been in this phase long enough to be a zeitgeist, but I think there's certainly a mood out there that's making some of this a little bit more challenging. I wanted to talk a little bit about hope because I want to share an idea. Some of you have heard this, but I think it's useful, and I'm guessing some other people are struggling with how much hope to have right now. And this goes back to Joanna Macy. This is another book she wrote with a guy named Chris Johnstone. It's called Active Hope, and I think it's a worthwhile book if you guys haven't seen it. She talks about hope as active hope as a practice. She says it's like Tai Chi or gardening. We often think about hope as something you have or you don't have, like it's a noun. And she says, no, hope is a verb. And what you want to be doing is thinking about ways to, like it says, to strengthen our commitment and our capacity is to kind of strengthen this active hope practice for ourselves. She talks about a spiral, but essentially in the beginning, you start actually with gratitude, the things you're grateful for, because that's a nice grounding. And then you think about what's actually happening. So the people in this room are not the folks who are sticking their heads in the sand. And she says we need to have clear-eyed seeing. We need to be aware of what we're up against so we can figure out how to take it on. So we acknowledge what is and how scary it is, and then we get to work. So the second phase is thinking about what do I want? What do I hope for? What would I like the world to look like? And then you identify what are some steps that I can take to move in that direction. It's irrespective of outcome. And I think that's really critical because it's easy to kind of get stuck on our tracks when things feel really big and oppressive. And the fact is we can always be moving toward the thing that we hope for at any time. And I like to think about it as like, how do I want to show up? How do I want to move through the world? I want to be moving through the world. I want to be sticking up for things. I want to be able to look my son in the eye and let him know that I really tried to do something. That's how I want to move through the world, even if it feels bleak at times. And again, the idea is that this can actually be energizing, that you're engaging in active hope and you're helping to create the world that you want. And again, the arc may be very long, but it's not about the outcome. It's about the process. It's about the act of engaging in active hope. And if that sounds appealing to you, I'd encourage you to check out the book. It's not very fat, but I have found that very helpful, and my undergrad students have actually found that very helpful on the days when they're not feeling very hopeful. This is a cool conversation we're not going to have, but I think we'll be sharing the slides. And so if folks want to look at these questions, this is a kind of a conversation you can engage in a dyad where, again, you start with gratitude, talk about what you're afraid of, talk about what you'd like to see, and then think about action steps. I'm gonna hope, I'll go back for Robin because she's slow. I'm going to hope that maybe some of this conversation, sometimes, again, when we're talking about obstacles, that can actually make things more insurmountable, but I hope we've come up with some solutions that make people feel, yeah, like there's some room here. This is a loaded question, and I want you to all please me. So how many people's number went up from the conversation? Anybody? Some. Okay. Anybody's go down? Okay. You wouldn't tell me if it did. I'm going to join in that shared delusion. Thank you. Yeah, I'm hoping, again, looking with a clear eye, but then again, these are speed bumps. These are not roadblocks. They're speed bumps, and we can move through them. Okay. I'm going to encourage you guys to think about, are there goals or commitments that I can set, maybe in the spirit of active hope, things that I can do in the realm of climate and health or just climate advocacy? And then I'm going to encourage you to take those steps. Think about that behavioral activation. I'll share one that I'm going to do. Oh, gosh. This is a review. Goodness. Okay. So I'm teaching an undergrad class right now, and we're going to have an event. This is my commitment. We're going to have an event on the 25th. It's at Free Cycles from 7 to 10 in the evening. And it's going to, some of the folks in the room here are going to be tabling just to get the word out for students about some of what's happening in our community, because they're often not in touch with that. We're going to engage in some climate conversations, and we've talked about them being cross-generational, because I think students are, again, sometimes they feel like, wow, there's nobody doing anything. And some of the folks who are doing stuff are saying, where are the students? And this is a chance, hopefully, to be talking to each other. We're going to have some climate conversations. And then we're going to end the evening with some great live music. I would love if anybody in the room wants to come. It's free. Like we said, we're building social capital. We're not making any money off of this thing. And so if anybody is interested, there's the QR code. There's also a flyer. I'll just leave it up in the front of the room. Okay? And I think that is all I have for you. I'm about to run and drive to Spokane to see Hamilton, so I won't be around later. But I thank you for your attention, and thank you for your wholehearted participation, you guys. It was fun just to hear the buzz in the room. So thank you.
Thanks for your interest in Montana Health Professionals for a Healthy Climate's annual conference. If you'd like to be kept up to date on monthly actions for climate and health in Montana, you can go to montanahphc.org/newsletters to sign up for our monthly newsletter, or click the link in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe.